Welcome to the 7th episode of the COP27 Sharm-El-Sheikh Series with your host Abigael Kima. Throughout COP, we have been interviewing people from across the globe to simply share their experiences of what COP is like, their expectations, whether they have been met or not, and also getting to know what exactly they do back home, which obviously has an impact on the processes that happen here at COP. And today we're joined by an amazing guest from Nigeria, Damilola, and I will invite you to introduce yourself.
All right, thank you very much for having me on this platform. I sincerely do appreciate it. My name is Damilola Bolagun from Nigeria. I'm a lawyer and a social entrepreneur that believes strongly in the voice of young people in terms of developing policy to address development.
Great. And why is this work important for you?
All right. To also put in perspective, I'm the founder and CEO of the Youth Sustainable Development Network. And then when it comes to the importance of the work, I think it's very important that we understand that the population of the world right now, we're talking about over 20% being young people. And particularly in Africa, we have over 60% population being young people.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about addressing the issue of sustainable development and sustainability itself, which climate change and just energy transition is a key component, it is important that we are able to engage young people, because young people have the population, they have the strength, they have the innovation, and so it's only right when we want to address future problems or future objectives that the present population that is to be most affected are actually carried along.
Yeah.
And that's what we try to do at the Youth Sustainable Development Network, to work with young people, to create awareness, education, to get their insights in terms of policy recommendation on some of the pressing needs and pressing concerns around climate change and just energy transition and other sustainable development goals. And finally, we try to build consciousness for action, implement grassroots projects to drive change, because there is a need to build consciousness for action. And that's one thing that we actually are really bent on as far as the Youth Sustainable Development Network is concerned.
Is this your first COP?
No, this is my second COP.
And how would you compare the experience at this year's COP compared to the COP that you attended?
All right. So I think I'll answer this on two perspectives. First, as a personal experience, and second, maybe just as from the organizational perspective. So from the personal perspective, it's more of important exposure for me. So for the first time, there's always a first time for everything. I wasn't so clear as to what I was supposed to do. I wasn't so clear of my key objectives. But I come in here second time, and I think I'm more prepared to even engage more better. And so I'm kind of I was able to set my key objectives and my expectations of what I want COP to be like, which is, for example, leading my voice when it comes to youth action. And most importantly, I'm grateful for this platform to be able to match up with my key objective of lending my voice to youth action when it comes to climate. I really appreciate this opportunity. And then, of course, the other part, in terms of negotiation and key objectives of this COP, it's called an implementation COP. And so we knew so much happened in Glasgow, COP26, one of which is the particular loss and damage facilities about developing countries pushing for climate finance for loss and damage. And then we knew how it went. Towards the end of COP26, developed country or global north decided that no, they want to have the conversation for another 2 years to see whether there is a need or there is the importance of funding. As far as what is going on here so far, I'm able to see that at the top of the agenda, climate finance and even loss and damage is what is at the top of it. So I'm looking forward, and I'm very optimistic that will be addressed moving forward at the end of the week.
And you've talked about engagement of young people, and you've given a clear picture of how big our population is, especially in Africa, with about over 60% of us, of the population in Africa being youth. So at this COP, would you say we have been meaningfully engaged? Because it's one thing to be brought here, and it's another thing to be actually meaningfully engaged. Would you have something to say about that?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a great question. And it's clear that it's a work in progress. And then it's looking very positive, in my opinion. Because if you go back 10 years before this time, you don't even see young people attend high engagements like this. Right now, we are not only attending, we are as well speaking at sessions and even speaking with world leaders. A step further right now is to see how young people's pressing concerns and needs can be reflected in the negotiation room. So I think it's still a work in progress. I think we're on the right path. And I would say give it more time again, then we would be able to be at the head of things, to be able to communicate our concerns and reflect our needs as far as the agreements and negotiation is concerned. So I think it's a work in progress that is looking very positive in all.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you, because I feel like these are the fruits of the young people who are obviously not young right now, that had to really fight for a seat at the table. They had to fight for a piece of the cake. And now we have a seat at the table, but we just are not able to speak. So I guess it's a work in progress, and I hope when we keep pushing as young people to get to that place, it's actually going to move. And you've also talked about the Youth for Sustainable Development.
Youth Sustainable Development Network.
Youth Sustainability Development Network, yes. What exactly do you do? And I mean, what are the projects like when you say we work with grassroots people, and how are they receiving this information that you're giving them?
Yeah, thank you very much. Just that young people, we do three things, essentially: education, create awareness, because that's what a lot of non-governmental organizations, even youth-led, that's what they do. Because I strongly believe that when we know better, we do better.
I agree.
So it starts from creating awareness to ensure that people know better so they can do better. And then for us, again, with policy recommendation insights, we want to be able to get young people's insights on pressing problems, even if they are not represented here, that they are able to get their insights reflected and echoed in important engagement like this is one thing we do. And finally, we go as far as implementing action, and this relates to the question around working with the grassroots. So we all know there's the Glasgow Climate Pact, we know the Paris Agreement. So we don't go back to our respective communities and explain what these things mean to them. Rather, we design a solution that can impact them positively to meet up the objective of those high-level agreements, which is one thing that makes us stand out. We actually implement projects. We actually implement sustainable projects. And what we did of recent was a solar irrigation project off-grid for local farmers in Lagos that actually helps them promote sustainable agriculture. Prior to that solution, they make use of generators, which is costly and not environmentally friendly. And so what we did is to bring about the solution around solar irrigation. So it's powered by solar off-grid, and then that way they are able to reduce the cost of fossil fuel and also cut down their emission, which meets the high-level agreements such as the Paris Agreement and even the Kyoto Protocol and even the Glasgow Climate Pact. So we're designing solutions at the grassroots and ensuring that they are able to catch up, and so no one is left behind is what we stand for in terms of action. You've
actually said something important. I always say you act from a point of information, and you've said when you know better, you do better. So and I appreciate the fact that you've also talked about the importance of building on projects that communities can relate to, because of course some of these terms at COP are quite complicated, but in the end these are policies that would actually have to reflect the impacts down at community level. And so as we wrap up, what are the two things for you that would make you say this was a successful COP?
Okay, two things that will make it say a successful COP is one, beginning to recognize youth concerns when it comes to drafting of the outcome of negotiations.
Agreed.
As far as climate action is concerned, there is the issue of mental health problems amongst young people. So a lot of times these things they're not represented in high-level engagements or in negotiations. So I mean, beginning to take into action the concerns of young people as far as the negotiation is concerned makes it successful for me. Number two is I mean, a lot of people say the climate finance. I have a different perspective because I think both human and natural resources, as far as Africa is concerned, there is so much we can do, and we need to lift this dependency mentality.
Yeah.
So we don't have to wait for anyone to say, okay, you promise us, you give us this. I mean, yes, cool, we emit this. It's justice that we get the finance to be able to match up with the reality of what we want to build. But I think at the end of the day, we need strong institutions such as the African Union to be able to stand fit and represent the true reality of African continent.
Yeah.
And so it's for me, I would say the climate finance, of course, coming through, but of course there is a need to even implement these funds when they come to drive the impact we want.
Yeah.
So strong institutions at the national and regional level across developing countries, across Africa particularly, is important.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't just say climate finance. Of course, I want it to come through, but to drive change as well. A successful COP to me means that the countries here represented, once the finance comes, they are able to implement it to drive key impacts.
Well, thank you for sharing that new perspective, and I feel like every time I speak to young people at COP, they're always sharing a different perspective of what we know as the key asks and key priorities for Africa. And so if anyone would like to support you, your work, or join your movement, is it only based in Nigeria?
No, we work with young people across the world. So we're just headquartered for now in Lagos, Nigeria. And so if anyone wants to contact, there's the website. I'll share the link with you.
Yeah,
and then it's going to be
I'll put it in the description.
Yes, and then my email, everything, it's all good. So, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's been lovely to have you, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and I really do appreciate this opportunity.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you.